It happened inside a cold hospital hallway at exactly 2:47 a.m. A tired young waitress named Harper Collins had just finished a brutal double shift when a frantic nurse burst through the ER doors, pleading for help. A man was dying, rare blood. Type, no time left. Without hesitation, Harper stepped forward. She had no idea who he was, no clue her simple act of kindness would ignite a chain of events so powerful that her name would echo across the entire country by sunrise. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Harper, 26, wrapped her thin sweater tighter around her shoulders as she sat quietly in the hospital's blood donation room. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but exhaustion. She had just clocked out of an 18-hour double shift at a roadside diner where most customers barely glanced at her, let alone tipped. But tonight, none of that mattered. Moments ago, a nurse had rushed into the ER waiting area, shouting for a donor. A man was dying. Rare blood type. No time. Harper's blood matched. She hadn't asked for a name. She didn't need a reason. She just stood up and said, "Use mine." Now she was here, a plastic tube running from her arm to a unit filling with deep red. Her head leaned back against the wall as her mind drifted between fatigue and the questions. She was too tired to ask. Who was the man? Why was no family here for him? Why did the nurses look so nervous? On the other side of the wall, beyond frosted glass, doctors moved urgently. Machines beeped. Orders flew across the room like gunfire. One nurse glanced at Harper every few seconds, her expression unreadable, part amazement, part tension, part something else Harper couldn't name. Just 30 minutes earlier, Harper had been wiping down a sticky counter at the diner, the same place she had worked since high school. Life had never given her much more. She paid bills, helped her younger sister with rent, and dreamed silently about becoming something, anything more. But dreams needed money, and dreams were heavy when your pockets were light. Yet tonight felt different. As the unit filled, the nurse monitoring her IV spoke in a hushed voice. "Most people wouldn't have done what you just did." Harper blinked. "Anyone would have. He needed help." The nurse shook her head. "No, most people hesitate. You didn't even ask his name." "Does his name change the fact that he's dying?" The nurse gave her a long look, but said nothing. Then, just as quickly, she pressed a call button. Within seconds, the room buzzed with new energy. A man in a tailored grey suit appeared, speaking rapidly to one of the doctors. He looked entirely out of place, sharp, calculated, important. Harper glanced at him through half-closed eyes and whispered, "Who wears a $1,000 suit at 3 a.m.? The nurse glanced at her, again said nothing. The blood unit was sealed. The IV was pulled. Harper winced but stood on her own. She didn't wait around to be thanked. She just asked if the man would live. The nurse nodded but avoided eye contact. Harper walked out into the freezing night. Her ride was half an hour away, and her phone was dead. She wrapped her arms around herself, watching the streetlights flicker. What she didn't know, what no one in that hallway had the courage to tell her, was that the man whose life she had just saved wasn't just anyone. He was the wealthiest man in the entire city. He had whispered her name to his assistant, and by morning, everything Harper had ever known was about to change. This wasn't just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something the world would talk about for years. And Harper Collins was not ready. She woke the next morning to the sound of her old alarm clock buzzing relentlessly. The sun had barely risen over the sleepy town of Willow Creek, but Harper's mind was already racing. A strange pull sat in her chest, exhaustion mixed with anticipation. The night before lingered in her mind, like a vivid dream. She had no way of knowing this day would shatter her quiet life and launch her into a world she had only seen on TV. Sipping lukewarm coffee at her chipped kitchen table, she noticed her phone buzzing. She had forgotten to charge it overnight. The message on the screen was from an unknown number. "Harper Collins, you saved a life last night. We need to speak." Her heart pounded. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. She opened the door. A sharply dressed man stood there. Calm, composed, expensive suit, eyes that carried weight. "Ms. Collins," he said. "I'm Marcus Davenport, personal assistant to Mr. Alexander Reed. He wanted me to find you as soon as possible." The name struck her, familiar but out of place in her world. "What is this about?" she asked. "Mr. Reed is the man whose life you saved last night. He's one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the country. He insists on meeting you. Today." Marcus handed her a sleek black envelope. Inside was a formal invitation to a private event in the city, hosted by Alexander Reed himself. Harper's pulse quickened. Why would someone like Reed want to meet her? Was this a trick, a stunt, or something else entirely? She thought of her sister Leia, the only person who ever believed she was meant for more. Harper hoped this moment would prove that belief wasn't wasted. By the time she arrived at the towering skyscraper downtown, Harper felt impossibly small. The glass walls, the marble floors, it was another universe. Marcus guided her through endless hallways until they entered a lavish private room filled with quiet power. Then he entered, Alexander Reed, tall, impeccably dressed, sharp features, softened by a genuine smile. His eyes locked onto hers. "Harper," he said gently, "you saved my life. I am forever grateful." She tried to respond, words caught between awe and disbelief. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," Alexander said. "Most people hesitate. You didn't. That kind of courage matters." Silence settled for a moment, and then his voice changed. "There's something I want to offer you. Something beyond gratitude. But that's a conversation for later." Harper's mind spun, but she stayed composed. She didn't know what lay ahead, but her life, her entire life, was about to transform. As she stepped back into the night, the city lights sparkled like stars, and the story that began with a single selfless choice was just beginning. She wasn't going back to the same life, and Harper Collins would never be the same again. The next message arrived before she even made it upstairs. "We need you at the Reed Foundation office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Your presence is requested by Mr. Alexander Reed." Her fingers trembled. This wasn't just coincidence. This was an invitation to a new life, one she never asked for, but couldn't turn away from. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing. The sleek building, the polished halls. Alexander. Reed's eyes, kind, intense, unreadable. He wasn't the man she expected. He was different. But what did he want? Could she trust it? The next morning, the city buzzed with early life. Harper arrived at the Reed Foundation. The building shimmered in the morning sun, a fortress of wealth and ambition. Marcus greeted her again. "Welcome back, Miss Collins. Please follow me." They moved through elegant halls until they reached a vast conference room, and there, waiting, was Alexander Reed. His voice was calm. "Harper, you saved my life when no one else could. That showed me more about your character than any background, check or interview ever could. I believe people like you are rare, and I want to offer you an opportunity." Harper listened intently, her heart pounding as Alexander explained the vision behind the Reed Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to giving back, empowering communities, and changing lives. "We want you to be part of this vision. I want to offer you a position where you can help lead our outreach programs. You have a perspective that we need." The offer stunned Harper. She thought about the long nights serving tables, the constant struggle to keep her family afloat, and the dreams she had quietly buried. Now, she was being handed a chance to not only change her life, but the lives of countless others. It was overwhelming but thrilling. "I don't know what to say," Harper admitted. "This is more than I ever imagined." Alexander smiled gently. "You don't have to decide now. Take some time. We want you to understand the impact you could make." As she left the building, Harper felt a rush of emotions: hope, doubt, excitement, fear. She knew this was just the beginning. Her life, once ordinary and predictable, was now unfolding like a story she hadn't dared to dream. But beneath it all was a quiet truth. She had saved a life, and that single act had opened a door she could never close. As she walked through the bustling city streets, Harper realized that sometimes the smallest moments could change everything. The question wasn't what her future held, but whether she was ready to embrace it. The night settled around her, thick with possibility. The story of Harper Collins was far from over, and the next chapter promised to be even more extraordinary. The world was watching, and Harper's journey was just beginning. Days passed like a whirlwind. Alexander Reed's invitation had launched Harper into a new world, one filled with promise and challenge. She woke each morning with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls, messages, and meeting reminders from the Reed Foundation team. They wanted her to visit project sites, meet community leaders, and prepare to step into a role that demanded everything she had, and more. She had never walked through polished corporate halls or spoken face-to-face with decision-makers who influenced entire communities. Yet there she was, learning fast, absorbing every word and detail. A fire ignited inside her, a need to prove she was worthy of the second chance she'd been given. Her younger sister Laya noticed. Laya's eyes sparkled with pride, telling Harper silently that this was the moment she had always deserved. One afternoon, Harper stood in a sunlit room surrounded by leaders of various nonprofit projects. Alexander Reed stood in the back, watching quietly as Harper addressed the group. She spoke with passion about ways to support struggling families in their own town. Her voice carried the weight of lived experience, and the room fell silent to listen. When she finished, the silence gave way to soft applause and approving nods, even from those who had seemed skeptical. Afterward, Alexander approached her with a smile full of respect. "You have something rare, Harper. Not just courage, but heart. That's why you saved my life, and that's why you're going to help save so many others." The days that followed were a blur of activity. Meetings, community, visits, and late-night planning sessions. Harper balanced the demands with memories of where she came from, the diner, the unpaid bills, the dreams she'd once thought impossible. But this opportunity wasn't just about her. It was about creating something lasting, a legacy. Still, not everyone believed in her. Some questioned her credentials, whispering in boardrooms, casting uncertain glances. Could a former waitress handle this kind of responsibility? Harper heard the doubts. She felt the judgment. But she didn't flinch. Each doubt became fuel. She worked harder, learned faster, and proved herself day by day. One evening, after an especially long day, she stood by the window of her apartment and looked out over the city. Everything felt larger now, more dangerous, more beautiful, more possible. She thought of Alexander's offer, of the life she was stepping into, and the quiet vow she had made, to never stop fighting, to never forget where she came from. Her phone rang. It was Alexander. His voice was calm but serious. "Harper, I have something important to discuss. It concerns the future of the foundation and yours. Meet me tomorrow morning." Her heart raced with a mix of fear and anticipation. Whatever this was, it would change everything again. The journey that began with a single act of kindness was far from over. Harper Collins was no longer just a waitress. She was becoming a force, a symbol of hope and transformation. And her story was only growing stronger. The world was watching.